Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Series, a month-long event celebrating the authors and narrators that bring romance stories to life. Listen along as Viviana, Enchantress of Books, interviews your favorite writers and voices, share special guest posts, and stay tuned for some special information at the conclusion of the episode.
Hi everyone, today I have the pleasure of chatting with guest author Anna Durand. Welcome to Audiobook Lovin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you became an author, and how long you've been writing?
Well, I've been a published author for 17 years. But I used to write under my real name, and then I started writing romance novels. I just realized I loved reading romances, so maybe I should write some. And the other books I wrote did have romance in them, but they weren't romance novels specifically. So yeah, I started writing those. The first one I wrote was a paranormal romance, Willpower, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And I kept writing more and more, and having more and more new books every year. So it just kind of happened. And then a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to seriously get into it and treat it like a business, and really write a lot and write every day. And so that's when I really started becoming much more prolific.
Do you find yourself to be a plotter or a planster?
I'm kind of a little of both, but I don't make outlines or anything. I've done that. I've been a writer for a long time. So I've done that, and I've kind of been there, done, not going to do it again. It just doesn't work for me, but in my head, I will have the story worked out before I even start writing the first chapter. I know what it's all going to be. It's in my head, and I've got scenes in my head that kind of play out like movies, and that's how I plan my books.
Yeah, a lot of authors say that it's almost like a movie when they're thinking about it, that they kind of see it. That and that the characters talk to them. Do you find that the characters talk to you as well?
Oh yeah, and these days, since I started doing audiobooks, I tend to hear narrators' voices reading it in my head.
Gee darn, you're hearing Shane in your head. Oh, so harsh.
Yes, that's awful.
The struggle. Same thing
It's
with
tough,
Emma
but somebody's got to
Wilder.
do it,
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
have lots of narrators' voices in my head.
Yeah. Well, it just tends to happen as soon as I learn who the narrators are, and I need to read a blurb or something. I'm already hearing it in their head, in their voices. So it happens to a lot of people. So you're not alone. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm not the crazy person in the room.
Absolutely not. You've come to the right club. We're not crazy. We're just very passionate about what we like. You mentioned that you started writing in a completely different genre and got into romance. What was it about romance that made you really focus on it and say, this is what I'm going to write going forward?
Well, I had been reading romance novels. Of course, when I was a teenager, I loved science fiction. But eventually, I realized that I was gravitating more and more toward books that had a romance in them, even if it wasn't the focus of the book. And then I started reading actual romance novels, and I just realized that's what I liked about it, was the romantic relationship was the focus. It was all about the emotions and how they get to know each other and decide whether they really want to be a couple or not. And then you get some tension in there from, maybe other people interfering, or, a murderer coming after them, or who knows what. But yeah, that's what I like about it. It's so varied. I mean, romance novels can be suspense, they can be comedy, they can be science fiction, it can be anything. But I really like the emotional part of it.
And do your books tend to have a solid, with HEA, so happily ever after, or have they ever had a happily ever after, for now? I think is what they call it, happy for now.
Happy for now, yeah. No, I go for the happily ever after ending. Even if I'm going to have the same characters in the next book, like for instance in my paranormal romance series, Undercover Elementals, the first 3 books have the same hero and heroine. But at the end of each book, there's a happy ending, and it's not like a teaser that in the next book they're going to get back together or something. They're happy, really happy at the end of each book.
Yeah,
So
because you
that's the
don't.
way I do it.
Okay, because you don't want the reader to grab the book and throw up against the wall, thinking that they're, not going to get back together again. Especially since nowadays we have devices instead of paperbacks. That's going to be a little expensive. Um,
Yeah, I don't want to throw that against the wall. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, where do you get your ideas for your stories for your books?
Um, I like to read and watch documentaries and stuff. I'm into science and history and that kind of stuff. And even in my contemporary romances, there's still some of that in there, because that's what I really like. And actually, for the Au Naturel trilogy, which is about a nudist resort, that idea came out of my real life when I was a teenager. My family lived a few miles down the road from an actual nudist camp. Of course, you didn't actually see the naked people. They had a wooden fence all around it that was solid, and you couldn't see it. But that's what it was. Yeah. And last year, I was talking to my mom about that. We were reminiscing about when we lived there in Texas and that nudist resort. And suddenly I had this great idea for a romantic comedy about that. Why not? Sometimes it's things like that that spur a story, and other times it's my interest in science and history, especially ancient history and mythology. That plays into the Undercover Elemental series, which has a lot of characters who are ancient immortal beings who are gods, or they're sylphs, or they're whatever. So I make use of all my interests and even experiences from my life to come up with stories.
The Hot Scot and the Hot Brit series, how did that come about?
Well, the Hot Scots came about because I wanted my family name is Scottish, and my dad was always very proud of our Scottish heritage, and I have some on my mom's side too. So we were into the Scottish stuff, that was fun. And so I decided when I started writing romance, I thought, well, maybe I'll write a historical Scottish romance. That would be fun. I like to listen to those and read those. I thought I would do that, but you have to do a lot of research for that. So while I was doing research for that, I suddenly thought, well, this is so fun. I like this Scottish stuff, but I want to write something right now with that. So I thought, well, maybe I'll make it a contemporary romance about Scots and Americans falling in love and the culture clash aspect and all that. So that's how Dangerous in a Kilt came about, which was the first book in the series. Um, I did research in Gaelic and finding phrases they could use and all that. That's how that happened. Um, and then the Hot Brits I just came up with this year. I just thought, well, I'd like to have a series that I can put on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, because lots of people love that. They use that to get a lot of their reading material. So I wanted to have something in there, but I wanted to make it a new series for that. And then I thought, well, I got Hot Scots. Why not Hot Brits? Sure, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's a great
It's a
idea.
really complicated process to come up with that one.
We always love an accent, so
Exactly.
you're giving us two different ones right now, so thanks.
You're welcome. I live to serve.
Thanks. So the Hot Scots series right now currently has 8 books, with one pending that's going to be coming out later on in the year. Do you know when you're starting a series that it's going to be 8 books, it's going to be 15, or it just depends on, you just keep going as long as there's a story there to tell?
Yeah. Well, the Au Naturel series, that's a trilogy. I planned from the start for that to be a trilogy. The other series, I just keep going as long as I have ideas for it. And I keep having lots and lots of ideas for the Hot Scots series, so I don't think I'll be ending that one anytime soon.
Yay, darn.
I gave the McTaggarts lots of cousins. Plenty of characters to use.
True,
And I'm
yeah.
probably going to give the Hot Brits some cousins too, so you can look forward to that.
That is definitely something that when it comes down to having series that where we fall in love with the characters and they have a family and we end up falling in love with the family. And then of course it becomes, ooh, are they going to get their own story? So
I
that's
know
always.
people ask me that all the time. Oh, is so and so going to get their own story? I said, well, yeah, eventually. Yeah, I don't have it all planned out which cousin gets this book, I don't have it planned out to the 50th book in the series or anything, but as I'm writing each one, I figure out which cousin will be in the next book, and then that's how I write it.
Yeah, all as it comes, right?
Yeah, and I like the family aspect of it. That's something I enjoy writing, that dynamic of the families. Um, so that's why I included that in there, and it turned out readers really like that. They love that it's about a family. So I did that with the Hot Brit series too. The first 3 books are about brothers, which is just like in the Hot Scots series, where the first 3 books were about brothers. So yeah, I'll probably give them cousins too.
Yeah. Well, I know that's definitely going to be making a lot of your readers and listeners happy, especially Miss Susie Vanderhall. What did she say? She says, "Hey, Viv, can you ask Anna if Alex has a brother to stay in the Kilt family, but on the Brit side?"
Well, I'm also, and I'm sure she knows because we follow each other on Twitter and
Yeah.
exchange tweets sometimes. I've already said I'm working on a crossover book, between my 3 parent contemporary romance series. And this is serious. It started out as a joke, but I'm actually going to do it now. And it's the Hot Scots, Hot Brits, and they're at the nudist resort. so, so, so there will be a Scot and a Brit in that one.
Oh, nice.
But the first 3 books in the Hot Brit series are about the Dixon brothers. So I'm going to give them some cousins and friends and everything, who are of course all sexy and gorgeous too. Because
Yeah,
that's the fun
right?
part of it, right?
Of course. I mean, otherwise, what's the fun in it, You
Yes.
also want to ask the parents, like, what's in the water that y'all are drinking to produce this? When it's like, hello.
They're lucky people in
Yeah.
Scotland and in England,
Yeah. Definitely on my list to travel over there.
I don't know if in real life they all look like that, but
I
we
like
can
the
hope.
scenery, yeah. I like the history and the culture too. So
Yeah.
there's other perks,
Yep.
and it becomes a fun science experiment too. Like how many do look like that versus not. The hypothesis, all that fun stuff. I can so make it official. It's not even funny. Um, is there a subgenre of romance that you like to write but haven't gotten into yet?
Yeah, the historical romance. I still have that idea for the Scottish historical romance, which I haven't actually written yet. But yeah, now I'm thinking maybe that'll be an ancestor of the McTaggarts. He's
Yeah.
in that book. That might be kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then also knowing where they end up, and going backwards to say, if you only knew about the boys.
What they're getting up to these days.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's when the great grandfather goes, "Last, that's nothing compared to what I've done."
That's right.
Oh, the Tories, I can tell you. So usually when, many, many years ago, when it came down to writing, people automatically thought hardcover, paperback, and now we're thinking ebooks and things like that. What made you decide to put your releases, rather your titles, in audio?
Well, I pay attention to the trends in the publishing industry, and audiobooks have been growing by leaps and bounds. It's becoming one of the most popular formats for books. So I thought, well, I should start getting my books in audio then. It's what people want now. People who still want the ebooks, they can still buy them, but I can also have the audiobooks. So why not do it? Why not make it in every format so that people can buy whichever version they like? And because audiobooks are more, a performance rather than you're reading it in your head. So it makes it a different experience. So that I have fans who had not listened to audiobooks much before, but when I started having audiobooks, then they became fans of it because they heard those and it was so much fun to listen to. Um, but yeah, did it because it was the next natural step in the evolution of my writing career.
Do you listen to audiobooks on your own for yourself?
Oh yes, I love audiobooks. I listen to them practically every day, every evening before I go to bed, I listen to an audiobook to relax. Somehow, even if it's an exciting book, it still relaxes me, you know? So I love listening to them. So that was also another reason to get my books done in audio, because I just like that format. It's fun to listen to the narrators performing it instead of just reading it.
Hmm. Do you have a set of narrators that are like your go-to narrators? It doesn't matter what they're narrating that you tend to kind of follow into.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of historical romances when I'm listening just for my entertainment. And Rosalind Landor is one of my favorites there. She is just wonderful reading those historical romances. So I've been listening to one by Mary Ballog, which is a really nice romance. So yeah, I like her, and there's lots of narrators. Of course, I like Shane East, not just because he does my books, but because I've listened to other books he does. I like listening to him.
He's okay. He's okay.
Yeah, he's all right.
He's all right.
And there were some narrators that I had not been familiar with before they did books for me. Those were mainly the ones that Shane found for me to do books with him, like Emma Wilder and Vanessa Edwin. I had not been familiar with them before, but they're just fantastic and wonderful jobs. And so now I'm listening to other books that they had narrated because now I know about them.
Yeah, no, they're both Emma and Vanessa are fantastic, and they have such a range, especially when the books are in dual POV, where the one character is doing both the male and the female. To be able to do both is really important. Otherwise, you can turn the listener off. Vanessa and Emma are fantastic with the male voices, and
Yeah,
and
they both are. Yeah.
yeah, and they're in their own when they do the different characters of the ladies and stuff. It's like, again, their range is just phenomenal. I discovered Vanessa through Shane too. Smart boy there.
Yes. He knows all the best narrators.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's how that community works. That's one of the many reasons, obviously, that I do love that community. But they have this way of working together and discovering each other, and able to say, "Well, I can't because of either schedule or I can't do a Scottish accent, but we do know someone else, and here you go." So they have that sensibility of sharing is caring, literally. So that's always a fun thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And Emma Wilder did Lethal in a Kilt for me with Shane, and she did such a great job with doing the Scottish hero's voice in her chapters. Especially, there's this chapter toward the end where most of the dialogue is from the man, but it's Emma narrating it from the heroine's viewpoint. And I just loved the way she read that dialogue where she's being the Scottish hero in this chapter. It was very impressive. I was very impressed with how she handled that and did such a fantastic job with it.
So when it comes down to the casting, in your first time that you ever did your first audiobook, how was that process? How do you go about selecting who do you think should be this character?
Well, the very first audiobooks I did were like almost 6 years ago now, and they were short stories. And I did royalty share, which is where you split the royalties with the narrator. And yeah, so I just picked whoever would do that. you know. But then I didn't do that for a few years. And when I went back to want to do more audiobooks, by then I could afford to pay them up front, pay them a flat fee for it. And then you have access to more and better narrators who have more experience, when you can pay for it that way. So then I was really doing it the really hard way, which I didn't realize at the time, but now I realize, my gosh, I did it the absolute hardest way possible, I think, which is going on the ACX website, which for readers who don't know is the Audiobook Creation Exchange, where you can self-publish your audiobooks through there and get them on Audible, right? So I would go on there and search and search and search in their listings of narrators to find somebody. And it was very time consuming, and I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, I did find some really good narrators that way who were not well known, who hadn't done a whole lot of stuff. They were very good, and they did great jobs with some of my early romance novels that were made into audiobooks. But yeah, that was how I did that back then. But then I moved on, and gradually moved up to wanting to not have to do all that myself. So that's why I wound up hiring Shane East to produce and co-narrate my audiobooks, which is so much easier for me. Although probably not for him, since I make him find me Scottish women narrators. Yeah, for me, it's much easier.
Yeah, this is what I need. Go do it.
That's right. That's basically what I tell him. Here's what this book needs. Go get that for me.
Yeah.
And he always does it. So.
Yeah. No, he is very well networked. And again, it goes back to that whole of having the conversation with others and saying, hey, do you happen to know anybody? But it is a lot of work, the producing side of things. So I'm glad that you were able to find someone to do them for you. And that way you have more time to, write the stories, because that's what we want.
Yeah. I can't have more audiobooks unless I write the stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you provide input as far as, either when you're self-casting or rather when you have someone else producing it? Like, for an example, The Natural Passion, which is a book one in the Natural trilogy. You had Jason Clarke and Ava Lucas cast for this one particular book.
Right.
So how did you come about, how does that process look to say, hey, I want a Jason and an Ava? Did you select them and then have the producer, in this case, maybe Shane or yourself, kind of just reach out to them, or are they coming, like the voices?
Yeah, that one actually went through Brick Shop Audio, which is a production company. Yeah, and they give me, several auditions for the male part and several for the female part, and as soon as I heard Jason Clarke, I said, yes, he's the one. I want him on this one. And then when I heard Ava's audition, it was so great. I said, yes, she's Eve Holt. She's that character. I want her to. So yes, that was easy too. Because I didn't have to go search for anybody.
Yeah.
I used a production company to do that. And, yeah, they took care of everything. I just sat back and waited for the audio to come in so I could listen to it.
Yeah. Do you listen to the audiobooks once they've been completed, or is it just like for the final proof?
First time I listen to it is to check for anything that needs to be fixed. But then later, after it's released, I'm on Audible. I have a membership, so I will download copies of my own audiobooks so I can listen to them and just to enjoy them the second time. Because the first time I was following along in the script while I'm listening to it, which I still enjoy the performance while I'm doing that, but it's kind of distracted, So then I like to just listen to it to enjoy it later on. Even though I wrote the words and, won't know what it says, it's still fun to listen to them performing it and making it sound even better.
Yeah. Do you find yourself writing the books now to be more audiobook versus traditional ebook? There's a little bit of change in that type of book,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little different. I do think about that some when I'm writing the book, but I have to write the book the way it needs to be. So I try and make it as narrator friendly as I can, but I still have to do what the story needs to do. So I don't know. So that's how I wind up with a Scottish heroine and have to say, go find me a Scottish narrator. Because I wrote it that way anyway, even though I knew it would be kind of difficult to get that done. But yeah, then we did find someone, so that was good.
Yeah, it's always good when you do find somebody, especially if it fits the type of the voice and the performance and of course the accents. We are definitely a sucker for accents. Is there one that you like to hear? Like, do you have a favorite accent that you're going, oh yes, yum, kind of thing? Besides, I'm assuming Scott and British, but
Yes. I like those, yes.
Yes.
I don't know. I would guess those are my favorites because I write about them, and I don't know. I like pretty much any accent. It depends on the voice of the person who's speaking in that accent. They make it sound sexy and smooth and all that. That's a little better than someone with a nasal voice who speaks with a Scottish accent.
That is true. Yes, yes, that is true. It can make it difficult to get into the right, mindset and frame to kind of think about where this is going. So when it comes down to the audiobooks that you now have, and I know that you're saying that the scripts, you kind of write the story, but do you also kind of start having in mind maybe as you're writing of like when the character says something that you go, ooh, this would be awesome in a Jason Clark or a Shane or an Emma, kind of, narration tone or character. Yeah.
In these series where I've already had at least one audiobook done, like the Au Natural series, and so I know what the narrators sound like when they're reading my words. I do hear that in my head as I'm writing it. Oh, I'm going to write it this way because I think when Jason Clark reads it, that'll be really sexy and fun. Or Ava Lucas is going to read this part, so I'm going to write it this way for her voice. I do find myself thinking that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we all have our favorites sometimes when they say a specific word. I know that I think for Jason, for Joe, and maybe even Shane, when they say like they kind of growl the whole like fuck or something like that. Do you have a favorite word that you kind of like, I'm going to put this one a little extra in there just for me to hear it more? Do you find yourself doing that as well?
Yeah, I do hear their voices saying the word fuck. Yes, when I write it, they say it differently, better than I can say it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do kind of think, well, maybe I'll insert that in there too in that sentence, just so that he can say that. Why not?
Why not? Well, you are listening to them too, so it's not like it's just for us now. You have to, you got to have some of that self-care and listen for it yourself. So it's always works.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite curse word?
Well, I like the Gaelic curse, Bottom Donish.
What does that
Which means
mean?
the devil's penis.
Oh,
I found that one in a book, and I thought that's so fun. I gotta start using that one in all my Scots books. So yeah, I started using that in book 3, and I've used it I think in every book since, just because I just think that's so funny.
and how does that go again?
Bottom Donish.
Bottom
I think
Donish.
that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah. So you would say like you're such a bottom Donis, kind of like that, or?
Yeah, it's kind of like saying damn or shit. Or
Got it. Okay. Bottom
yeah, it's
Donis.
just a curse.
Got
Yes.
it. When it comes down to the different, like the dialects and, whether we have them, because even in the States, we have our own sayings, bless her heart means,
Right.
it's not something sweet in the South. So it's always exciting for me to kind of learn some of these little new phrases, because then I'll actually end up picking it up. Like, thanks to Shane, I've done bloody hell and you wanker and stuff like that. So, and then other ones that I've picked up on other books. So it's, again, fun to pick up these new ones that you can possibly even use them in public and not people realize that it's a curse word,
Well, if you're using Gaelic, yeah, you can curse all you want. Nobody will know what the heck you're saying.
Now, Gaelic it's difficult. It's not easy whatsoever. You must have done a lot of research when it came down to that language to include it in your book.
When I decided I wanted to have some Gaelic phrases in there, that was the first book, Dangerous and a Kill. There isn't as much of it in that book because I kept doing more research and finding new things to do. And with the most recent book, Lethal in a Kilt, I even learned some Gaelic grammar so I could get the proper plural form of a Gaelic word. And it's only used twice in the whole book, but I did all this research to make sure it would be correct. So yeah, it does require research, but I think it's fun. I love language. I love to learn languages. The only one I'm fluent in is English, but I know some French, a little German, Now I know some Gaelic and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's fun, so I like including it in my books.
Once the book is done and it's out there for the masses to collect and read and listen to, the reviews start to happen. Do you read your own reviews for your books?
I try not to. It's kind of like being tempted by the snake in the Garden of Eden. You can't resist it sometimes. But if a fan emails me and says, "Oh, I love the book. I wrote this review," then I'll go read it. So I can tell them, thank you so much. Glad you like the book. And once in a while, I just can't stop myself when I go look. But I really try not to because, I appreciate everybody's opinions, even the people who don't like it, that's their prerogative. So yeah, but yeah, it can be very disheartening to read some reviews. So I really try to avoid reading them and have sort of Zen attitude about it, like, yes, you can write all those reviews, and I will just go on with what I'm doing, and not pay attention to that because I'll, you can drive yourself crazy as an author if you read every review and take it to heart and say, well, I got to change everything I did because this person didn't like it. But yeah, there's thousands of others who loved it. So
Exactly. Yeah. And reviews are, they're opinions, and we all have,
right.
different ways of, we all have different opinions, but also different ways of expressing it. Have you ever found that you've been provided with some constructive criticism or some constructive feedback on a book that made you go, maybe for next time I'll keep that in mind, or anything like that? Because I know that
Yeah,
that's
there
also
have
the
been some.
intent.
Yeah, that does happen. Yeah, I send out advanced copies to some people, and so they'll give me their feedback. Sometimes they have some constructive criticism. I'm not necessarily going to change the book that's about to be published, but
Mm-hmm.
in the future maybe I'll do that. Or maybe not. And actually, I had never thought of my Hot Scots books as romantic comedy until I read that in a review someone wrote of Wicked in a Kilt, which was the second book. They called it romantic comedy. So I thought, maybe that is what these books are. At least in part, there's a lot of humor in them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so now I list them as romantic comedy too, contemporary romance and romantic comedy, because the reader pointed that out to me. I just hadn't thought of that before.
Sometimes you just all focus on the story and you forget, because there's so many different genres out there within romance that at this point I'm going, please, let's not invent anymore. It's difficult to keep up with,
but people do keep inventing more, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep up with all the new subgenres that keep coming up. And sometimes I see the name of a new subgenre and I'm like, what the heck is that? I don't know what it means.
Yeah. I know when new adult came into play more, that was being more like seriously used. I'm like, what? New adult? They're freaking adults. They're like 23. Come on. And what are we going to start having? New adults, middle adult, and vintage and antique adults? Depending on the age.
I know that confused me at first too. New adults. Okay, you're 29, but you're still new at it. You would think you'd be an experienced adult by then.
At this point, yeah. It's one of those I'm going, no, new adults, usually between the ages of 20 and 24. And I'm going, I was an adult when I was 18. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I've read different age definitions of new adult. Most time they say 18 to 30. So I have labeled some of my books new adult too, because they're in that age group, so why not?
Why not? Yeah. As long as no one busts out with like vintage and antique adult, I think I'm okay.
I think that would be like Egyptian mummies or the antique adults.
Yeah, because the vintage is like, what, 10, 15 years ago? So I'm going, okay, so if they're in their 30s, they might be vintage. And if they're in they're later on, they can be antique. At this point, I'm like I said, no. Do you find yourself that you have a favorite trope to write as well as listen to?
I don't know if it's an official trope, but I like the culture clash aspect of the Hot Scots books, and so I've done that with the Hot Brits too. Maybe a little culture clash thing, like what are the differences, and do they understand each other? That's where a lot of the humor comes in. Is what did that guy say? So yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
And I've done some of the Friends to Lovers stories. I did one, Fired Up, which was a standalone romance. And now the crossover book that I mentioned earlier is going to have a Friends to Lovers aspect to it too. I like that one also.
I always find it interesting though that it's one of those, you've been friends for so long and you have either the like version number one is when one of them has always been in love with the other for the longest time and they've just kind of kept it quiet. And I'm okay with that because been there, done that. But the other one is when they're friends and they're like, oh, can you do me a favor and teach me about certain subjects? And the guy's like, sure, because you're my friend. But then she takes off her glasses and all of a sudden she becomes a lovely darling that he just did not realize how gorgeous she was before. And I'm like, fucker, you have been friends for 15 years, Did you not?
You would think you would have seen her without her glasses before
exactly, right? Or made up somehow. But it's just funny how that kind of happens. And I'm like, oh, I take my glasses off all the time.
Yes. I think everybody does who wears
Yeah,
glasses.
exactly. It's like, I
Take
don't
them off
see.
sometimes.
Exactly. One of my friends were falling all over me like that. Jeez Louise. Do you find yourself kind of falling into one of those two categories when you do write friends to lovers, or do you kind of just kind of let the flow?
Yeah, when I wrote Fired Up, that was where the hero, Adam, had been in love with his best friend, Mel, for years. But he was a womanizer and she was with some other guy. And then she dumps that creep. But then she decides she wants to be celibate for who knows how long. Yeah. So a lot of the humor comes from that, him trying to seduce her while she wants to be celibate. And she doesn't want to admit yet that she likes him that way.
There's always that one friend when you're on a diet of any sort that's like, oh, come on. It's just bread.
Yeah, there's one scene early in the book where she has her own business, so they're in, and he's a fireman, so that makes it sexier too. Everybody likes firefighters,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're in her office having a talk, and he's telling her that he wants to have sex with her, and she's saying, "No, no, I'm not doing that anymore." But I can't remember all the words offhand, but
Yeah.
they have this cute banter conversation about how he's trying to seduce her, and she's not having any of that.
He's like, please, no, you can get your hot fire body out of here. There's no way that I can be enticed by that, as she keeps looking.
While she's drooling, she's saying no.
Well, it seems like you actually really do enjoy the books that you write, which is always a perk and a plus.
Yeah, I have tons of fun. Yeah, I have tons of fun writing these books. That's why I write them so fast, because I'm just having such a good time writing this stuff and making the characters say all these crazy things. They don't complain. I can make them say whatever crazy things I want.
That is true.
And then the narrators have to deal with that crazy stuff.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, but you're narrators.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Shane East and Vanessa Edwin are doing the second Hot Brits for me pretty soon. And and they're going to get to say lots of really wacky things in that book, because I have lots of fun making the characters do really wacky things.
Yeah. See, I've become friends with many of them, and if I were to ever write a book and have one of them narrated, I would, and as I'm writing, I'd be like, oh, that's right. So and so is writing this book, and I would probably do a dialogue with a bunch of bees, knowing that I'm just going to be fucking with them, just to have them. They'll end up texting me saying, "What the hell, Viv?" But it's just that's kind of like just how I am. I have those moments of complete evilness. But it's always funny because I see them also too. They'll post those videos when they've been recording for you guys, and they're just kind of like falling. There's always that one word that they can't get past for some reason. I'd be like, oh yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Or I'll just probably make up a script just for shits and giggles and say, here it is. And then they're going through and they're going, oh, are you fucking with me? Like, yes, I am. Have fun.
Well, I make them read Gaelic a lot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that. So
Yeah, I got nothing on you. I have nothing on
sometimes
you.
sometimes I use strange words that hardly anybody else uses. So, especially in Irresistible in a Kilt, I'm writing about two archaeologists, so they're talking about archaeology stuff. I don't know how the narrator's going to feel about that. They get to deal with that later.
Oh, I'm sure Shane's gonna be like, oh, this is what you and Viv, this is what you and Anna have been talking about, huh? You guys are having way too much fun with this. Go away.
I have fun writing all this stuff, and then they have to deal with how to read it.
Yeah,
How to narrate it.
but they do such a phenomenal job. So
Yes,
at the end of the day,
we
we get a fantastic product. Speaking of fun, I like to play a little bit of game at the end, towards the end of the episode, which is just Would You Rather. It's a little fun game that I like to find out what the guest is thinking about when I give them these questions. So if you have a bit there, we can do that. Would you rather always be 10 minutes late or 20 minutes early?
Early. Anybody who knows me knows that. I'll be early, yes. Yeah. I don't like being late.
Would you rather know the history of every object you touch or be able to talk to animals?
Well, I do talk to animals, so they don't necessarily talk back, but
Yeah, I think that's what they mean. That they actually you can actually have a conversation with them, or just know the history of every object. So,
oh, I think I'd rather hear what animals are thinking. I think that would be more entertaining.
would you rather never have to clean a bathroom again, or never have to do dishes again?
Wow, clean the bathroom never again.
Again.
I don't mind washing dishes.
No. That's a consensus. It's been that there's been maybe one in the year that I've been doing these kind of questions that comes up. It's always the bathroom that they don't want to do again. Would you rather be invisible or be fast?
Hmm. Probably invisible.
Ooh, things you'd learn, that's for sure. Would you rather lose your sense of touch or your sense of smell?
Probably touch. I like the way things smell.
Would you rather always be hot or always be cold?
Oh, I think cold. It's easier to deal with. You can put a coat on.
Yeah. Hey, I'm from Florida. I totally agree with you. I would much rather layer
I know
on.
I've lived in Texas, where it's
Oh,
100
yeah.
degrees in the summer.
Oh,
Oh, geez. Gotta run in the house to the air conditioning.
would you rather tell everyone your guilty pleasures or never partake in any of your guilty pleasures ever again?
I think I would just tell people.
Yeah. Last one. Would you rather have a personal chef or a personal masseuse?
Oh, that's kind of tough.
You've been flying through these.
Personal chef, I guess. Although it's kind of a toss up there.
Yeah, I know. That's why I always leave that one for last. So before we go, why don't you share with us what's coming up next for you?
Well, I have Natural Impulse, which is the second book in the Au Natural trilogy. And I'm already working on getting the narrators for that. Then after that, I have a paranormal romance coming out in August, Obsidian Hunger, which is the fourth book in the Undercover Elemental series. I haven't done anything about the audio version of that yet. I also have the third Hot Brits book, which is One Hot Crush, and haven't arranged the audio for that yet either, but I will. Don't worry about that. And then,
Thank
of course, in September, I have Irresistible in a Kilt coming out, and I do have that all arranged with Shane East and Elle Newlands, who is the Scottish narrator. Um, so that will be, hopefully, we'll have that out at the same time as the ebook and paperback version. That's what we're trying to do. So fingers
you.
crossed it will work out that way.
Yeah. There's so many different factors I share when I can, that there's just, if it's either ACX or if it's a matter of getting the narrator schedule down, I would just much rather wait. And I think the majority of us are under that same consensus of just waiting until you get everything done and versus rushing it or saying, no, I'm not going to do it at all. So,
Right. And this
yeah.
year, ACX has been having big delays. So then, Natural Passion was done in February, but it didn't come out until April on Audible. It was on other places first because I also use another distributor, but it didn't get on Audible until April. Oh yeah. But then One Hot Chance got out there in less than 2 weeks, so you never can tell.
No, you can't. And that's why I always say, hey, check out some of the other vendors. Sometimes the libraries, if the author submitted to the libraries for like Hoopla, Digital, or OneDrive, it can be available that way. And
Right, yeah.
rather Overdrive. Uh,
Overdrive, yeah.
yeah. And so those always I've always sometimes found them out there in the library versus before they get to Audible. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'll buy it later, but I need to listen to it
Yeah.
now.
Yes. Yeah, all my audiobooks are available to libraries too, and the ebooks also.
That's
Uh,
awesome. I love
through
libraries.
several different library services.
Mhm.
There's Biblioteca too, which I actually saw a lot of copies through that one, which I
Hmm.
had never heard of until I started distributing my audiobooks. But
Yeah.
yeah, libraries can be a big, good market for that. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
mine are available everywhere, so you can go check that out at your library.
Yeah. Well, I love them because I grew up in going to the libraries and discovering new world and all that fun stuff that libraries can bring to us. And now as an adult, I get to indulge more into audiobooks and discover sometimes new authors and narrators, because when it's that combo, I'm always going, oh, I don't like that. Versus like when I have one or the other that I know is
Right.
making the decision tends to be easier. So I'll always go to the library and say, hey, what else have they done? And then I either sample that, or if it's that book that I want is available, I'll just grab it through the library. And
Right. Well,
yeah.
yeah, I used to work at libraries, so yeah. I have seen it from that side too, of trying to help patrons find audiobooks and stuff through those services. Yeah. It's a little different when you're on the author side.
Yeah, it's true. So here's a quick question and a bit of a funny, because there is this meme that goes around when it comes down to librarians and even bookstore owners, or people that work in a bookstore. Has anybody ever come to you and said, I'm looking for this book. It had a red cover.
I don't think anybody asked me that one.
Okay.
But I had my own question. I never actually asked anyone, but for years I've had this question in my head. Like, there was this book when I was a kid, and it was a picture book, and it was about this little guy in a little tiny canoe, little toy, floating down a stream. What was that book? Does anybody know the title of that book?
Thank you, Anna, for being my guest for this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of fun. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. And until next time, happy listening.
Thank you for joining us in the Audiobook Lovin Series, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, as well as the series. We've included audio samples of our guests' work within the post for you to check out. Please make sure to visit the main page, link within the post, to learn more about the series, the authors, and the narrators. Please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to the series if you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms and subscribe to the Viviana Enchantress of Books newsletter. Until next time, happy listening. Audiobook Lovin hopes you've enjoyed this program.